the Dent Slayer, Matt Boyette. Thank you so much for being here.
She's smooth, boy. She's smooth.
So can I tell you another quick story?
All right, let's hear it.
So I told you last week about Dave Sanders
Yep.
and my interaction with him.
Yep.
So this one, it's probably one of the best ones I have with Dave.
Best stories?
Best memories I have with Dave.
Okay.
So with Dent Wizard, they have levels of achievement. So after you go through your initial training with Dent Wizard,
Yep.
then they give you opportunities to level up your skill, and you attend these different classes where they give you challenging dent and teach you to fix it to perfection.
Right.
So this would have been my Master Tech, I believe. I don't think it was 4-star. So they have Master Tech, 4-star, and then they have 5-star. But the Master Tech and the 4-star are
Skills-based.
Are skill-based, dent skills-based.
Right.
So it was one of those two. I'm pretty sure it was Master Tech. So we are...
Where was this?
This would have been in Orlando.
Okay.
At one of the auctions. I
Yep.
don't remember which auction, but
Yep.
they'd bring us down there. They'd say, hey, we're having this class. If you meet the time criteria for going, then
Show up
to this
Saturday morning.
and you show up. And when they start the class, they demonstrate the dent that you're going to be fixing that day. And so Dave Sanders, they bring in this Ford Taurus, which is everybody learned on those or has experienced those on some level if you've been doing it since those were around. I mean, those
Big
were
curvy sides.
big body line,
Oh, yeah.
big belly body line that they smack in. You got to fix it, and they're pretty challenging. And those were all flat bars too. I mean, we use flat bars for the most of those. So anyhow, it's time for him to demo his dent, and so he gets his. I think it was a Johnson, and they put a big water hose over it, and they smack it. And he smacked this thing hard, super hard. And he puts his wedges in, and he, sets up, and he starts pushing, and he's just going to town on this thing, and he's flat barring it. So he's been upside down, the Dent Wizard stance, and tongue's hanging out, and just pushing. And first of all, he gives you a more challenging dent than you get. Like the one he made for himself was harder than the one that he gave up, that he was going to give us. But we didn't know that at this point. So it was this really big dent right through the body line. And so the first shock was, oh my gosh, I got to fix that. Mm-hmm. And then he shows you how to fix it.
Right.
And so, he starts pushing on this thing, and it's bad, and it was locked up. And he's pushing to the extent that the whole top of the door folds open. Like the whole upper structure where the belt molding would go just collapses,
Buckles?
just buckles open.
Like the adhesive or something, like something came apart.
Something happened. Like the brace and the skin were intact. It didn't.
But it just
the whole brace broke.
Whoa.
And I mean, to the extent where you could, drop your shoe down the door, it was that much of a gap. Like.
Wow.
And you see him, he didn't miss a beat. He's like, oh my gosh, all right, what am I going to do next? And I see him, he runs over this pile of something, and he grabs a 2x4, and he just presses it back into place. And then he gets ratchet straps, and he opens the door and just ratchets around the door to hold everything back in place, to hold this door down so he can finish this dent. Mm-hmm. And there's got to be 20 or 25 people watching this with their jaws on the floor like, I got to do this. Because again, this is a demo dent for how you're supposed to fix this thing.
Right.
And so we're just like, oh my gosh. But he just got in there and he just pushed the dent out and got it flat and to the point where it was stable and removed all the stuff and finished the dent. And
he finished it?
He finished it.
Wow.
I mean, it was amazing to watch. I mean, looking at it now, just the ability, just the mental whatever you got to have to not get like bogged down in your head. I mean, you got 25 people watching you that you're here to teach. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the guy was just like clockwork. Like he did not skip a beat. It was just
didn't phase him.
Didn't phase him. Business as usual. Just constant forward progress. and he's just pushing this thing, and it was amazing. Like, again, I'm not advocating that we essentially destroy a car beyond repair where it has to replace a door at this point, because that was obviously a safety hazard, not structurally sound. But it was, from a repair standpoint, like, it didn't stop him. It didn't phase him. He just kept going, and kept going. And then obviously, like I said last week, he was sweating and bleeding, and it was just this huge series of events that just led to this, like, what am I witnessing?
It's an experience.
It's an experience. It is an experience that I've never seen happen again. And that guy's just a legend.
He should have his own podcast.
He would be canceled minute one. I mean, this guy, maybe we'll have him on one day. We'll see.
You think he's still around? He's still...
I think he is.
He's not in the scene. I know he doesn't work for Dent Wizard.
He's not in the scene, and someone commented on the last episode that he might be sick, and I don't know that.
Wow.
It would be good to maybe reach out and just connect with him again. And
if you get him on this podcast, it might be the end of this podcast.
It very well could be, but hey, these aren't live, so we could always just not air it, but it would still be good content.
Yeah. Definitely be interesting.
It would definitely be interesting. But bring this full circle. This is Dent Slayer Podcast, episode 2. We kicked off episode 1 last week, and it was awesome. And for all the people who are watching, we are live now on YouTube. We are live on Apple Podcasts.
Spotify, iHeartRadio, a couple other lower grade podcasts.
And where are we live with the video? Because we have the video and the audio. Is the video?
The video is on Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
Yep.
And do we have potential to get video on Spotify?
I don't know. I said I'd look into that, and I have not. Yeah. So I need to look into that.
But anyhow, that's where you can find us. So it's been really cool. We had a lot of good responses, and been really looking forward to this episode 2. Today we're going to get into your story, which is where we didn't get into the last episode, and then we'd like to maybe talk a little bit about where this came from, and how that started. So
I'll try to be a little more brief than you were.
Yeah. Let's start with some of who you are, just general information.
Okay.
Where you live, for the viewers that don't know you.
Yeah. So my name's James Ricci, and I own Dent Repair Jax. It's a paintless dent removal service company here in Jacksonville, Florida area. And so I've been running that for only since March 1st of this year. So May, June, July, August. So this is about 6 months. Prior to that, I worked for Dent Wizard for 18 years.
18 years.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So born in Orange Park, Florida, on the outskirts of Jacksonville, basically the Jacksonville metro area.
Is that where you lived before Arlington? Because I know you grew up in Arlington.
Yeah. So my parents divorced before. I can't remember my parents being together. So my earliest memories are living with my mom in an apartment in Orange Park, and man, one of my earliest memories is like on my bike at the curb of the apartment, like waiting for my dad to come pick me up. That's one of my earliest memories. Probably 5. Man, I was thinking about that in preparation for this, and man, just for you guys out there that are maybe single dads or divorced, and you only get to see your kids you don't live with your kids. You still have so much power, so much opportunity to make a difference in your kids' lives. I didn't know any different at the time. And like, I just remember that feeling of like my dad's coming to pick me up, and it was just like the best feeling. So, if you find yourself in that situation, don't let it demoralize you. Just know that there's still so much opportunity for good in what you can do in your kids' lives, even from that limited standpoint. So, yeah. So I I think I don't know exactly when they got divorced, but I lived with my mom in Orange Park until maybe I was 5 or 6. And then I moved, my dad got remarried. And so then I moved in with stepmom and step siblings in Jacksonville in Arlington. So I think I was probably around 6 when that happened.
And that was one of those was Chad, right?
Yes. So Chad is he's my stepbrother, and he's about 6 months younger than me.
And he's a dent guy.
He's a dent guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool story with him. He had an office job for, probably at least 10, 15 years. And I had been doing paintless dent removal, almost my entire adult life. And he had heard about it and everything. And he came to the point where he was like ready to get out of the office. And so I was always a local route tech with Dent Wizard, but he got a job as a hail tech right out of the gate. And man, he loved it. I mean, especially those early years, he was like the most excited dent guy. I mean, he loved it more than anybody. Just the contrast between being in an office all day to, doing something like that was like huge for him.
It's like a caged bird. I mean, the amount of freedom, opportunity, income potential that is there versus I know what he came out of. And I mean, it's probably a very stark contrast to what he was used to on every level, and walked into a great opportunity.
Yeah. I think I've never had an office job. Like, I've never had a traditional office job. Have you ever worked in an office?
No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like so many people have at some point in their lives worked in an office, and the only thing I know about working in an office is the show The Office that I've watched the series through at least 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, I never came from that environment. I mean,
Yeah.
I was always blue collar, turning a tool in some way, and on some aspects, I'm a little jealous. I mean, because that's
The Office.
Well, I mean, there are
conditioning?
perks to it. I would say, office perk. Unlimited coffee sitting right there.
Friends. That's where I'm like,
air conditioned.
Office parties,
copy machines.
Somebody's gonna bring cake in for your birthday.
Yeah. Someone's stealing your lunch out of the fridge. Those are all things that I know nothing about, that I'm a little jealous about, but not really. But
right, you would never do it, but there's an appeal to it.
No. I mean, even the admin stuff on the side of my business now is hard. I mean, it's not where I want to be. I mean, I do it, and we have to.
Burdensome.
It's necessary, but there's this constant draw to get out in the shop and do something that I'm used to doing. But
yeah, I think I don't know what it is about it. Once you have a taste of something where your effort directly influences your pay, and I know you can do that in an office, but I think it's hard to get away from that. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a relief. You just get a nice salary and you don't have to kill everything that you eat.
Well, it just goes back to how people are made up. I mean, there are some people that, like, for instance, some people want a yard where they got to get out there and cut their grass. Some people want nothing to do with that. They don't want to cut grass. And so it just really depends on
what you want,
what makes you tick. And
right.
Some people want to clock that time clock when they show up and clock it when they leave and throw their phone wherever.
Have a nice weekend.
Yeah. Send that.
Not think about it.
Out of the office email. You can't contact me, and I'll show up Monday. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, like a lot of aspects, I'm jealous. I mean, we went to Universal Studios yesterday, and my phone's blowing up the whole time, and there's constant.
Did you just let that ride the whole time, or
I
did
did.
you?
I did.
Yeah.
I put it on silent and put it.
That's always a battle.
It is. I mean,
should I stay on top of it? Should I just let it all build up and then deal with it later?
Well, the thing is, I mean, the constant thing is you're thinking it's going to all come crashing down if I'm not here to uphold it.
Right.
And in reality, it's not. I mean, there might be a missed opportunity, or
you're going to lose some jobs.
You're going to lose a job, but
right.
you have to. There's a trade-off, right? I mean, there's missed opportunity if I'm only staring at my phone and not going on rides with my nieces and nephews or my kids, like Like, so there's a trade-off, and you gotta balance that. So
even if you're on top of it, you're going to lose jobs. For instance, today I lost 2 jobs to friends of ours, good dudes, but I had scheduled jobs out, and then 2 jobs called me, 2 separate guys, texted our friends. Not their fault. They're just doing their job, but they could get to it today. And I was saying I'm coming next week or the following week. Yeah. And they said, hey, I got it taken care of. So it's like, you're always going to lose jobs. Like it's,
well,
you
that
can't
too,
avoid it.
But it's also never ending.
Never ends.
Like the phone will, and I'm not trying to take this for granted, so don't take this the wrong way,
No.
but the phone is always going to ring.
Yeah.
You know, we got this morning, we woke up to a dozen email estimates that we had to do. And, you know, you have this inbox and you're trying to get through it. And then as soon as you get through it, James, like me and my wife, okay, we're done. You set the phone down and not even 1 minute, 2 more estimates pop up. I mean,
I can't believe these people want to give you money and help you build your business.
Well, I mean, and I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful. I mean, obviously you want that side of it.
But it's work.
But it is work.
Right.
And you have to balance work life.
For sure.
I mean, and it's just learning that. And not to mention, I mean, as owner operators, it's like, you know, if I'm at home doing emails and I'm not out doing the dents. And so you have to be able to say, okay, I have to set this down for right now so I can go pick this up and do this.
Right. I got to make my current customers happy before I get some more.
Well, I found that for me, that if I'm doing one of them, I'm not doing the other one. I can't be doing both good.
Well.
I'm not doing both well.
Right.
So I have to divide and conquer. And so it's an interesting dynamic. It's an interesting balance. Just, you know, working in your business, working on your business, and then the same with your kids, the work, life, family relations. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a balancing act that. I know it's been interesting for you to learn. You started your own business this year, and that was an interesting journey. If you can go into that briefly, and how has that been? I mean, we're friends, and so I know a little bit about that, but you can tell us what it's like. This was what, 6 months, you said?
6 months ago.
From walking away from a career of 18 years?
Yeah. Really unexpectedly, too. I mean, not down to the day, but, you know, if you had asked me 6 months prior what I would have been doing, I had no plans of leaving that company. So with Dent Wizard, you know, over time being with them so long, ended up with guys coming and going, ended up with some really good accounts and, you know, doing really well. But some, you know, ownership changes hands with the company and different pressures happen. And so company wasn't doing the best financially. So they had to basically change the pay of the technicians. And so I was like, I'm not going to do that. You know, if you can figure out a way that I don't have to participate in this, then I'll stay. Otherwise I'm going to have to leave. And so, man, that was just that was difficult, but easy also. Difficult because it's like, man, I'm walking away from the only like real job I've ever had. To do something, you know, step out into the unknown. But I knew I couldn't. If I let that happen to me, I felt like I had lost all power in the situation. Like I was just rolling over and just letting them, okay, now I have a better idea what this relationship is. And now that, you know, there's no going back from that. And I couldn't do it.
So do you feel it was more out of principle?
For sure. Because the financially, it wouldn't have made a big difference for me. But after that long, I felt like what I brought to the table I should be getting paid more, not less, right?
Yeah,
The relationships developed, all the different things that, that you bring once you've been with a company for so long and built so many relationships and learned so much. But, for this, that wasn't out of the possibility of what would happen because, as you know, I've watched all of my friends at some point leave the company over not that issue, but, issues of principle that could have been avoided. It seems like every single one of them could have been avoided very simply, but at the end of the day, it's not, when you work for someone else, it's not your company. You don't get to make those decisions. So at the end of the day, instead of just complaining or whining about it, you have to be like, okay, well, this is not my company. If I want to do things differently, I got to start my own company. And so, yeah, that's basically what happened.
So I have an interesting observation that I've had for a while about Dent Wizard. So there's going to be a lot of technicians who watch this who can't relate or maybe never worked for Dent Wizard. And I think the ones who have will be able to relate. And I don't know of another company that somehow tethers you so strongly to that company that makes it hard to leave. Like,
it is.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I feel like the guys maybe who are in our circle who came up through similar ranks that we did get somehow tethered to this company beyond more than just your name on a piece of paper, right? I'm an employee here, that there's something greater, that some greater connection that keeps you there, so that when it does come time that you feel to leave, it's very hard and it's almost painful. Like, it's not just
very painful. Sure.
Guys don't just whimsically make that decision to leave. I know for me, it was a very hard decision. I know a lot of my other friends who have left that was a very hard decision. But like, if you talk, I know other people who are in other industries, they might jump businesses. Let's say you're working for an insurance company. They go from Allstate to Progressive and back to here and back to there.
Just how it is.
And it's just, no, I just
Typical.
go to the one that meets my needs the best, if that's pay or benefits or time, whatever that is.
Right.
But with Dent Wizard, it's not taken that lightly. I feel like guys somehow got tethered to this business. Is that what we're going to call it? Because it's got to be more than that.
I think you just get connected to the people.
So it's the culture.
Yeah.
So you get connected to this thing, and it just keeps you there. And I think you're either going to leave early on, like year one or year two, before you get connected, or you're going to stick it out for a long time, and then it's going to be hard to leave. But it's really interesting if you look at it. There's not a lot of other businesses that I could say have the same effect on people.
Yeah, have such a long tenure of employee retention.
Yes.
And if you look at it, like unbiased, it is a great place to work in general. It has its pros and cons if you're just looking at the PDR industry, but like in general, it's a great job if you have a certain personality, if if you're competitive, more sales driven. It is in general, it's a great place to work. And we can back this thing up, but like the training. So I started with Dent Wizard because I was in college. I was married very young. I was in college and I was in the Marine Corps Reserves. So my wife and I, our first year of marriage, I think we together made about $18,000, but we were living it up.
Yeah.
We were living in an apartment. The apartment had a pool, hot tub, volleyball courts, tennis courts. I've never lived like that ever since.
You're waiting tables?
Okay, and I had a part-time job. Yeah, I worked at a club, like a country club type place. So part-time job, part-time Marines, full-time college, married. And then, you know, I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you get married, things happen. You start to have babies.
Yeah.
And so we became pregnant, not we, but my wife. And so I was like, dang, I need to get a real job, right? So have several jobs, but I don't have a real job, right? So I remember at the time how big my world was, which my world, you know, wasn't that big. We were friends. We were all going to church together. Several guys at this church were all PDR technicians.
Yeah.
And I was pretty close with you. And I remember asking you how much money you made. And at the time, it was more money than I knew anybody on the planet made. I was like blown away, and it wasn't, it was just more than anything I'd ever heard. But that's probably because not many people are telling me how much they make. But,
and you were young. I mean,
yeah.
So I mean, that's a whole new circle of
it's adult
friends.
money. I'd never made adult money before.
Yeah. And I was older than you too. I mean, I'm what? How old are you?
I'm 40. I'm almost 42. How old are you?
I'll be 48 next month.
Okay. 6 years.
Yeah.
So you were making adult money, right? And you were like, hey, come work with me one day, just see if you like this. And I remember we went to a Cadillac dealership, won't say which one. And I remember just some random person came up. They were in a convertible, and you made like 50 or 100, whatever it was, cash in like very fast. And my mind was blown. My mind was blown. And I was like, the amount of time it'd take me to make that much money is like a day.
Yeah.
And he just made it in like 3 minutes. So then I was like, okay, Matt, listen, if this company is ever hiring, I need a job, so let me know. And then very quickly after that, you were like, hey, they're hiring. You want me to, you need to go put in an application. So that's how I got rolling. Yep. And the lady who interviewed me is Katie Drury.
Yep.
At the Denny's, her and Bob Schwins.
Yeah.
And I went to a Denny's and they interviewed me and ended up getting the job. But Katie, they were both great managers, but Katie was really good.
Yeah.
And she ended up marrying John Drury, and they're still married and have kids and everything. John is a long-time Dent Wizard technician. He's still with Dent Wizard. I mean, probably one of the most tenured people with the company. He's a great dude. Yeah.
Not a lot of those guys around still.
No.
The long tenured guys.
Yeah. Not that I know of. Yeah. Maybe there are, guys that are just doing their thing.
There's a few.
Off the radar.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I got hired. I'm still in the Marine Corps Reserves. I go to training in St. Louis. So if you were a Dent Wizard guy, you know all about this, but I'll kind of get into it just in case, you weren't Dent Wizard tech. So you go to St. Louis for about 2 months.
Yes.
And I don't, of course, this is all I know, but I think they do the best job at training someone from zero that anybody does. I mean, you go there and that's all you do for, 8 or 9 hours a day. You're there learning. You live in St. Louis. That's your whole existence. So you can focus on that, and their training is very good. They have probably more reps than anybody to know what works. But so there was I think there were about 8 guys in my class.
What year this been?
Okay. This was, so my first son was born in 06. So this was 05. 05. Yep. Fall of 05 about. So not a ton of people in the class. And I think everybody in my class made it. And to my knowledge, I think there's only one guy left in that class with Dent Wizard, Steve Solis, up in New York. What's up, Steve? And I have a good memory of him. You know, it's similar to the military in that you kind of get around people that you wouldn't normally be around, people from all over. And he and I are working on the same vehicle. And I'm pushing on this dent and like rocking the car. And he's trying to fix it. He's on the other side and it's rocking. He's trying to fix it. And he's like, hey, psycho, take it easy. That memory's just burned in my brain. But that was good times. Steve, he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think he's the only one left. But I think everybody in my class made it through. You know, you always hear about how people will not be able to make it.
Yeah, they wash out or.
Yeah, nobody washed out. To my knowledge, I don't remember if they did. Maybe they did, but some of this stuff is so long ago. I don't.
Yeah.
But great experience. One of the things that I was used to dealing with the military, right? Like I was used to being treated very poorly, you know, by people in the Marine Corps. Like it's not very welcoming environment.
Yeah.
But, you know, I come from, that's my main experience in the workplace at that time. And you go there and they're like, oh, hey, Livingston, is that what you go by or you want us to call you something else? And I remember thinking, wow, they'll call me by my middle name if I request that? Sure, you can call me James. And they were just very, you know, they do a really good job at just welcoming you into the company. From what I'd experienced.
Yeah.
Just very different welcome that you get from the Marine Corps.
I can imagine. Well, I think there's probably, so I was not in the military, but I would assume there's a few crossovers, right? I mean, you got to report every morning. You're staying with some of the other people that are in your class. They would put you in the same accommodations, right? And share. You show up and do jumping jacks in the morning and warm ups to get you going. And
yes, there are some similarities, but I mean, they put us up in apartments, like furnished apartments with like several bedrooms, and there was another guy from another class in another bedroom. It was a 3-bedroom, so I shared the apartment with one guy, but not a room.
Okay,
Had my own room.
Yeah.
Then that guy left halfway through, and then I just had the whole place to myself the rest of the time. Yeah. So.
And that was a relatively small class, right? You said 5 or 6.
Yeah, but that was it seemed like that was the norm then. And Brad Beach was my trainer.
Yep.
And so he was great. I don't think Dave Sanders was there doing anything when I went through, because I don't think he was. I don't think I met him until later on down the road, like at a advanced training.
Yeah.
So Brad Beach was my trainer, and then Rob Kaysen was there. He would help sometimes, and then Dave Christman, I think is his name.
Yep.
So the 3 of those guys were the trainers, and then Steve Payne was the head of training.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve was a good guy. A lot of interaction with him. He's since passed, but if you didn't know Steve is another big personality. Me and Steve got in a big debate on line board versus the reflection, the fog.
Yeah.
And me and him just went at it for a long time in a good way, friendly debate about what one's better. And then years ago they started what was called like a tool council, where it was about people who were wanting to get into developing tools for Dent Wizard.
I was involved in that.
And I got on with him, and it didn't come to nothing other than a couple emails or something, but they had good intentions. But Steve, I like Steve. I always had good interactions with Steve. He was very passionate, it seemed like, took his job very seriously, and I liked him quite often.
So the training in general, I mean, it was a great experience, but it was very hard. I remember it being very hard. I don't ever remember having the feeling that I was good to go. Like I was always nervous that I was going to fail. I never had like any kind of light bulb moment where I felt like I got it. I think I was pretty much just middle of the class as far as my scoring went, but I was just constantly just trying to do my best and progress and just kind of trusting their system, but never feeling confident that like, oh yeah, I'm going to make it through this. It was very difficult, but I wasn't ever on the bubble or anything. Like I wasn't failing the tests, but I was never in a place where I felt comfortable about it. I was always very aware that like, dude, I have to stay very focused and engaged because this is not easy.
Do you feel like now looking back that it was maybe just like muscle memory you were developing? Like maybe you were learning, but under the surface type muscle memory, body position, like dent theory type stuff, whereas maybe, you know, it didn't surface right away, but you get out there and because your training doesn't stop at St. Louis. I mean, you go out and then you got to go to work, and some of the more, more practical training sets in once you get out there. So do you feel like that was?
I just think it takes a long time for your, like you say in your training, where your eyes and your brain and your body all have to communicate together to understand what's going on. And, you know, whenever you're trying to push a dent, and like, I feel like there's more going on there than just like seeing where you're pushing. Like you're looking at the whole area of metal, how it's moving to understand where you're pushing. And I just think that, I don't know, it took me a long time, a very, really long time.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable about it.
I don't remember a time that it like ever clicked for me.
Yeah.
It was not like, there wasn't like a light bulb moment or
Right,
like an event, a day that I remember.
Just a slow
progression.
Yeah. So if you're out there learning and you're struggling, that's just how it is. Like it's a struggle. Neither of us, I think we're both pretty good technicians at this point, and neither of us had that light bulb moment. So man, if you're struggling out there, just know that just keep going. And if you don't give up, you know, you just slowly make progress.
Well, I think the development too for technicians now is a lot faster than where I would have, been experienced, or because I mean, you have so much information at your fingertips in a moment's notice, with any skill set. And with PDR, I mean, it's just, there's a lot there. And I think the learning curve from when I got into it was way more soft. And now it's just, I mean, you have some really good guys who come right out of training and they go right into complicated dents. I think there's a lot of factors, we talked about it a little, the tools and some of what the car is made out of. There's some other things at play that are different now, but I think all of them combined make this learning curve way more steep, or like you can get
faster,
quick, as opposed to in the early days, it was just grinding it out and failing every day, and maybe just failing a little less the next day and a little less the next day, and then one day you're like,
for sure.
Oh, I think back to my prior repairs, and I would hate to see them now. Like I don't. My
Some
brain,
of the ones I did today, you hate to see.
My brain says I don't know how I did this back then. Like I just can't. Yeah. It's a hard. I don't really have a good memory really far back.
It's probably good.
Oh, it's definitely good. It's good we didn't have cameras either,
bro.
We'd all be in trouble if there was we talk about what kids can get away with now with what we did back then. If there was any cameras, I would be.
There was cameras. We just weren't taking pictures of it.
Well, they weren't out everywhere, and
right.
You didn't have them on your phone.
Yeah.
But things were a lot different back then. But I think it's just easier to learn now. I think that
the world's a lot bigger. There's a lot more people to learn from. There's so many more resources, tools. Yeah. So I'm at school, going through school. It's hard. And I get towards the end of school. So I'm at school. I'm still, I told you I was a full-time student.
Yep.
So I transferred to a program that I could keep doing online. And back then, that was like, not everybody was doing online classes. So I had to transfer from University of North Florida to Florida Gulf Coast University because they had a program that most matched what I was already doing that I could finish online. So in St. Louis, I was still full-time classes with college, and I'd go to dent school, get off. I'd go to the gym. I'd go to Panera. Panera had free Wi-Fi, and I'd do my college classes. Maybe I went to Panera before the gym, did my stuff, bought a Cinnamon Crunch bagel with the free butter because I couldn't afford the cream cheese.
Yeah.
This is my daily. And did that, gym, went home, just repeat the whole thing. So I get towards the end of that, and I find out, because I had to get special permission to miss like your weekend training with the Marine Corps Reserves. I had to get like special permission to do this. Well, I found out while I was almost to the end, and they sent an email saying that my unit was getting activated again. So that will be I did a deployment before that. This would be my second deployment. And so at the end of dent school, I know, okay, I'm going to go home. And I think it was a couple days I had in Jacksonville before I had to report to be activated, put on active duty, and then do a train up, a workup, and then deploy. So that was crazy. I remember coming back. I think I worked with I think it was you, like one day, and it was right before Thanksgiving. I think it was like the week of Thanksgiving. So it was already a short week. Maybe I worked 1 day or 2 days, and then that was it. And then I had to report like that Monday or something like that. So that was crazy.
That was to where? Where were you about to deploy to?
To Iraq.
To Iraq.
Yeah. So I was when I joined the Marine Corps, I was in what was called air delivery platoon. So parachutes, dropping stuff out of planes. We would have parachutes, parachutes, and like equipment. So we would jump out of the planes, but then we would also like rig up stuff to drop out of a plane and parachute down. So that was what I started with. That I did a deployment with that unit. That unit got disbanded. So then I had to choose a new one. And that one was in Savannah. So I was driving to Savannah like 2 hours. And I was like getting tired of that. So I said, I'll just join the one in Jacksonville. And the unit in Jacksonville is an amphibious assault vehicle unit. I think it still is. At least it was back then. So those are like tracked vehicles that can go in the water. You know what that is?
Yeah, UAVs.
No.
AAV. Amphibious, huh?
AAV.
AAVs. Yeah.
UAV is like a drone, an unmanned aerial vehicle. But I never checked into that unit before I went to dent training. So maybe I went one time or something. Very, very briefly. But they got deployed not as amphibious assault vehicles, but to do river boats. So they're going to retrain the whole unit to do boats instead of amphibious assault vehicles. But there is some crossover because, the guys that are trained with those vehicles are basically trained to drive a boat, right? Mm-hmm. So there is, a lot of crossover. So it wasn't just activate and deploy. It was activate. We went to Camp Lejeune in North Carolina for several months and trained to do that. And then we deployed to Iraq. And that was 2006. And so if you'll remember, my wife was pregnant with our first kid.
That was my next question.
Yes.
When was the timeline for all that?
So I had to get special leave to see my first kid born because I think, and it was after. So for Christmas, I didn't take a lot of leave and I stayed at the base so that I could save leave for that, to have some time off to see Judah born. So I remember being at the base with only a couple people there, and it was really weird, very depressing to be at a military base, kind of like during the holidays when no one's around. Very depressing. But so everyone else is there. I get special leave. I see my first kid be born, and I'm there for a few days, maybe a week, and then boom, back to North Carolina. And then when he was 2 weeks old, we left to go to Iraq.
For how long? Potentially.
It was, I think, about 7 months we were there, I think. But we were supposed to go guard this dam in the Al Anbar province in Haditha. Big, huge hydroelectric dam. And we were supposed to guard either side of it with these boats. And we did that for a little bit. But of course, I was new to that unit. So I was not a trained amphibious assault vehicle crewman. So I just got put into a leftovers platoon, kind of headquarters platoon, where everyone is in that platoon that isn't trained with those vehicles. So you have everybody in that platoon, like administrative people, cooks, people that drive vehicles, like general mechanical people, just people that do all kinds of stuff end up there. And that's what, that's where they put you. So you're just like a support group. And so they had us training. What, you have a question?
No.
So those guys were all learning how to be either a boat captain, boat driver, what they call that, coxswain, or like a crewman where you're on a gun on the boat. And then everybody in this misfits platoon, we're all learning how to be infantry people on the boats, or, just doing basically like odds and ends type things. But I think they were really just trying to keep us busy, right?
Yeah.
So we were messing around with like Zodiac boats. We were doing all this kind of all these things to where they were telling us that we were preparing to be infantry on the boats, where the boat would go pull up to the shore and we'd get off and go do something as infantry people, come back, just do little missions like that. And we were dealing with the trucks that would put the boats in the water. And anyways, we went to Iraq, went to Haditha. They didn't have anything for us to do with the boats while we were there, so we ended up doing patrols with the trucks around the area for a while, around the dam, because the big threat then was the IEDs, like explosives that they would bury and blow you up when you drove by or walked by. And so that was the big threat. The boats really weren't getting into anything crazy, but we would go out there and they're, I remember even when we were turning over with the old unit, with the new unit, we would do a turnover, and we came on an IED and had to call the EOD out there and blow it up and everything. So that was it was pretty cool to do that. Felt like we had something cool to do, but that didn't last very long because the Battle of Ramadi was like heating up, but I didn't know, back then that's not what they called it, but this was in 2006. So if you follow Jocko, if you listen to the Jocko podcast, he talks about this all the time. Today, did you listen to it today?
I did not.
So today he was talking about, he had the parents of Ryan Job, the guy that he got shot, his machine gun got shot, and then it blasted him in the face. He lost his sight, and then he lived for a few years after that, and then ended up dying from complications of a surgery.
Wow.
So that, if you know all that story, that's where we were basic. So they were having there's a lot of fighting down there. That's a few hours away from where we were. The people down there on either side of the city of Ramadi, there's a canal on one side, and then there's the Euphrates River on both sides of the city. And so the coalition forces didn't have control of those waterways, so they were, the enemy was basically using the water, and we weren't able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So somebody down there said, oh, there's these boats up there. They called up there and took, with this one company of people, split us in half, took half the boats, and half of us went down to Ramadi to do operations with what was going on down there.
And that's where you went.
That's where I went, yeah. Most of the guys in the headquarters platoon had to go because they were all the people who drove the trucks. So anytime anybody needed to go anywhere, the whole headquarters platoon had to do it. Basically, we were like the convoy people, mounted patrol people. So there were a few people that stayed back, but basically a skeleton crew stayed and a skeleton crew left, to where at some points you had people doing multiple jobs. It was very sparse as far as people wise. So, yeah. So we were. I was only at the dam for maybe a month or so before we went down to Ramadi, where things were.
Is that where you took your shrapnel?
Yeah. So we get to this place, and we start to go scout where we can put the boats into the water, because there's no boat ramp.
Yeah.
We have these huge boats. They're 40-foot boats. They're big and heavy, pulled by a big 7-ton truck. And there's not a public boat ramp that we can use. There's no boat ramps like on the bases. So we had to, you go out into the city, and we're trying to find a place with a grade low enough to where we can legitimately put these boats in. And it's not like you just go try to do it with your truck and a boat, where it's 4 boats, and like it's a circus of a situation. Because you have these huge 40-foot boat, a huge 7-ton truck, 4 of those, and then you have 2 more Humvees for security. So, and it's to logistically manage that whole thing.
Sure.
Put 4 boats in the water. It's kind of a mess. So we had to figure out where we were going to be able to, whenever we would do a mission, where are we going to put the boat in to get to this part of this canal, this part of this river. And so we figured out where we were going to do that. This whole process was very difficult because none of us are engineers. And so we go through this whole thing of, okay, let's just try to put them in right here where the grade seems good enough. And it's just, it's your standard like dirt, sand, desert type terrain. Put them in, put the boat in. Okay, that was easy. Now let's take the boat out. Well, putting a boat in is a lot easier than dragging that thing out of the water, loaded with weight. And now tires are spinning, a mess. So we went through this whole trial and error to try to figure out how to build a boat ramp from nothing, with nothing, basically. And so at one of these sites, we figure out we're building a ramp out of these airstrip panels that kind of hook together. So long story short, we're going to the same spots a lot to try to make these ramps happen. And the terrorists, the enemy, they noticed, okay, I mean, this is kind of bad, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a military situation and you're showing you got to go to this one spot every time,
you're making a pattern. And
oh my gosh, and so it was like every time we would go there, we kind of sweep the area for IEDs, and so I was part of that crew who would sweep the area at first, And I was just thinking, it's just a matter of time before somebody just gets blown up by an IED. But that never happened. But they did shoot mortars at us. And so that's what got me, was a mortar round. So
what? Let's go into that scenario a little bit. So it landed close. How?
yeah,
You're down there setting boats.
well, we're putting in these panels.
Okay.
This is crazy. These panels that we put together, we bolt them together, and then we get this truck to bring them out here to put them in the water for us. At some point, we figured out, we put them in there and they float. So now we have to figure out how to sink these things. I can't remember at what point we are at this whole process of troubleshooting this, but we're down there putting these panels together, and then I just remember waking up on the ground, my ears ringing. So,
Just in an instant.
oh yeah, I just like I just opened my eyes and I'm on the ground and I'm thinking, oh, an ID went off.
So there was no prior warning shots or nothing. No shots over the bow. It was just
nothing.
Direct.
Immediate. So the way that you fire mortars is you usually like do a string of them. Mm-hmm. So the first, if I'm trying to hit this cup and I estimate it's 50 yards away, I'm gonna shoot a couple long and then a couple short. So I'll do a pattern, and then we'll adjust after that.
Yeah.
So but thankfully they weren't that good, the mortar people who were shooting it, because the first one hit the closest, and then all the rest of the string went further away. So a bunch of people ended up getting hit with that shrapnel from that mortar. And at first I didn't realize that I was hit with it. I just thought the explosion stunned me, and then I felt like things hit me, but we were in gravel, so I thought maybe just some gravel hit me. So, that I remember waking up, getting up, and then more explosions happening, and then there's a bunch of people around with trucks, and I think we had a boat also with a crew on the boat with machine guns, so lots of heavy machine guns. And at the time, the rules of engagement were you couldn't have cell phones, binoculars, anything that you could use to be like a spotter, or to call in, something like this. So with any kind of indirect fire, you have a scout or like a spotter who can see the target, and usually they're calling back to the people who are shooting who can't see. They just are following like a azimuth and distance. The spotter is communicating to them and says, you go left this much, this many degrees, drop this much, or they're kind of walking them in. And so somebody in our group saw somebody with something, I don't remember if it was binoculars or a cell phone or whatever, across the river from where we were. And then people just start shooting that. There's a vehicle. Yeah. And so
game on.
Yes. So people are shooting that thing. And I remember kind of going back up the ramp, and you kind of you're always aware of
hold on. You took it in the leg.
Yeah.
Right? So you didn't know you were hit initially. You thought it was some rocks.
Yeah.
You're stunned, mostly stunned, ears ringing, whatever. Probably, you get up and you don't know you're really wounded yet.
No.
And so you're walking up the ramp
I'm able to operate,
trying to engage what's happening.
Right. And so machine guns are shooting at this car, but then before we do all this, so my job was, in that whole mission, was the transition from driving the boats to putting the boats in the water, launching the boats, and recovering the boats. So they kind of, they split up your responsibilities. And I was a sergeant, and my whole responsibility was the boats into the water, recover the boats. That was kind of my responsibility. So every time you do these things, you do a brief where you go over, if this happens, this is what we do. This happens, this is what we do. You go over everyone's responsibility for everything. It takes forever, but it's thorough. And I just remember everyone's shooting at this thing, but then you don't know what's happening. You think, well, maybe this is just part of a big attack plan that's going to happen. And so I remember telling people, hey, don't worry about that. Watch your area over here. Look at what's going on over here. I remember kind of realizing that is taken care of. There's probably 4 machine guns shooting over there. I don't need to worry about that. We need to kind of see the big picture of what's going on. So I was also had like a first aid kit. I wasn't a medic, but I was like what they called like a combat lifesaver. So you carried a medic pack, huh?
IFAC.
It was, you basically just have some basic first aid training, but you have to carry a medical pack with you. And so there's one of the guys had it in his face, shrapnel in his face. And so I was like, okay, let me help this guy out. He's bleeding out of his face. Remember this guy? He's bleeding out of his face, and he's got his hand on his face like this, and then he's firing his rifle. That was just epic.
Yeah.
Picture of this guy being awesome. So at some point, somebody said, hey, your leg is red. So my leg, I was just bleeding, and my whole leg was red. My boot was red. And then, the guy who was in control of the whole operation tells everybody to stop shooting. And then he kind of gathers everybody together and says, hey, we were really close to a base. So, really close. And so everybody that had been wounded, which it was a bunch, got into a couple vehicles and went onto the base to get first aid. But that dude, he said, we are not leaving here because we are not going to let the enemy tell us, basically control us. We're going to finish doing what we're doing. And I always remember that. Like, he had the wherewithal. He was a master gunnery sergeant, which is the highest enlisted rank, McCann. And he was, he'd been in Desert Storm. He was just the oldest guy there. Yeah. And he had, it'd be like one of us being in that situation after our whole life being in the military. You know what's going on. You kind of understand the bigger picture. And he knew, we're not going to leave this place. We're going to hold this land and kind of teach the enemy a lesson that they can't make us do what they want us to do. And that's one of the things I remember and kind of admire about him doing that, and just him just knowing what was going on enough to know that was the right thing to do. That's, I guess that's why you like wisdom and experience in situations, because you're really dealing with a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old guys. And then you have a couple people that are have some life experience. Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Do you keep in contact with any of those guys?
A couple, not very many. But so that guy, he didn't say anything, but he had shrapnel in his leg too. But he didn't say anything. He sent everybody else in, and then later on you find out that dude was wounded too, but he wasn't about to leave. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it is weird how I don't keep in touch with a bunch of those guys. A few of them, but
that was all reservists.
Yep. There might have been a couple that weren't, but 99% were. Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so you're wounded, you go get first aid, and then
they bring a priest or a chaplain. Somebody sends a message and says, "We're bringing in wounded. Bring the chaplain in." And you don't want that because you're just thinking he's coming because he thinks someone's going to die. Yeah. Right? And so I saw that guy walk in, and I'm like, dang, this is serious. This guy's coming down here to, I think he was a Catholic priest. So I know they do kind of like last rites. And I'm just thinking, dang, this is crazy. The chaplain's here. But no, we had a lot of people get wounded in my group. Between that, a couple bullet wounds, I believe, but no one died. Thank God, nobody died. So it was we had a lot of people get wounded, but no one died, and I think that was that probably saved a lot of people's lives on the back end, because I feel like when people die, you really start rethinking all your decisions for what you did, in that time. And the suicide rate amongst veterans is crazy. And I think part of that, part of the blessing of the people who didn't have to see somebody die is that you don't have to relive that for the rest of your life and like rethink, could I have done something? Was it my fault that this guy died?
Yeah.
So thankfully nobody in that group died.
That's pretty crazy to be able to take that much damage collectively, but all superficial or nothing serious. Nobody lost a limb or.
No, there was one guy that got that took a bullet through the knee, and he was gone. He got flown out and he was gone. Everybody else healed up in country and they put you back to work.
So they kept you there. You finished out your 7 months.
Yeah.
So you took shrapnel in the leg.
Yep.
Or was that in your calf?
Yep. And I think, you don't really think about it, but after that happened, I thought, oh, maybe I get to go home now.
Yeah.
Right? So, but that's not how it is. So I stayed there, healed up. But basically, while all these guys were kind of healing up, we had so few people that they couldn't do a mission. So even the guy with the shrapnel in his face, I don't think they did a mission until he came back, because he was one of the captains of one of the boats. So we were just skeleton crew. Yeah. So yeah, did that, came back to PDR. That was my full-time job before I left, even though I never really started.
I remember when you came back, the management was concerned that you lost your skill.
Yep.
That you would have to go back to Missouri to retrain, and I was pretty not having that. I mean, you had been gone 2 months for initial training and whatever other workups you had to do for before you got deployed.
I think it was about a year.
And then you're deployed. Yeah. And then they're like, oh, no, we want to send you back to St. Louis for 2 months to do some more training.
So 2 months, then a year. So,
Okay. So, and I remember some of the management telling me that they were going to send you back. And I was like, no way. No way. Anything that James needs to learn at this point, we can teach him here in Jacksonville. Yep. He had a kid. I don't know how much time you had seen or spent with your kid.
None.
From the
barely
beginning.
Any. Yeah.
And so I remember I don't put my foot down a lot, but I remember putting my foot down at that and saying, no, this is nonsense. We can get this guy up to where he needs to be. Just leave him with us. Let him do some ride-alongs with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember not even having to fight that battle.
Yeah.
I didn't even have
to. Because I think on paper it made sense.
Right.
But once it got to, somebody's heart, whether or not it was local management, I don't remember who it was at the time. But then it was like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. Let's work that plan. Right. So kept you in town, and then went right into your PDR journey. That's
it. So in like that, really the situation that I came up in was, I mean, you couldn't get any better. I had all these friends that were really good PDR techs willing to help me. Yeah. That I was, going to church with most of you guys.
Yeah, we had a brotherhood.
Yeah. So you, Chip Merkel, Shane Hood, your brother Mark, Will hadn't gone to
Yeah.
school yet. And then, am I missing anybody from church?
I don't recall offhand.
So, and then Mike Caudell,
Yeah.
he didn't go to church with us, but I mean, we were all pretty close.
Yeah. He started off as a tech and then became
Yeah.
a manager at some point.
Yeah. We just knew him from Dent Wizard.
Yeah.
But I had a huge support network where, I mean, every day of the week I could ride with somebody different and learn from them, from somebody that I knew, had a personal relationship with. So it was very an ideal situation.
Do you remember when you came back? If any of those, do you feel like you were able to get right back on that bike and ride it, or do you remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I lost all this?
I don't feel like I didn't feel like I lost it. It seemed like I picked right back up.
Yeah. I don't remember there being a lag. I was asking from your perception. Do you?
Yeah. But I wasn't good. I just felt like when I got done with school, I was just barely good enough to fix a tiny dent. And that's kind of where I felt like I was.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they teach you those underlying body mechanics, muscle memory things that you just have to. Those are the foundational things that later on that skill just builds on. So that's kind of my perception of that. I never went to formal Dent Wizard training school, so I don't know that, but that's kind of my perception of it, because the real training really starts when you get out and you're in the real world and you're dealing with all the variables of cars and all the things that we deal with. But
that first hurdle of being able to see your tool and fix a dent, basic dent increase, is the biggest hurdle to overcome. And that's what they're getting you to. And that's the basic. That's the first thing you got to do if you're wanting to get into PDR, is you have to be able to fix the smallest dent and the smallest crease. And if you can't do that, don't buy advanced tools. Don't do anything until you can do that one thing.
Yeah.
And if you can do that one thing, then you can progress into anything from there. But I think that's the most important pillar.
I describe it as you learn letters first, and then you turn those letters into words, and words into sentences paragraphs into chapters into books, blah blah blah. But you got to learn the letters, and those are the foundational things that everything else is built off. And so you got to learn those fundamental things, and then slowly keep adding to that. But yeah, that's interesting, man. That whole your whole story of the military and how that played out, and you got a Purple Heart. Yep. For that, right? Yep. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yep.
Any other souvenirs in your leg still?
That piece is still in there.
Is it?
Yeah. It's like a little raisin.
Yeah.
It's there. I feel like one day it's gonna come out, kind of like a zit. I'll get to have it maybe.
Yeah.
When I'm in my 60s.
Yeah, put in some epoxy.
Yeah.
Keep it on your nightstand.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they usually leave that stuff in there. Even the guy with it in his face, they leave it in. I guess they say it does too much damage to try to dig it all out.
So my dad was shot in the head when he was, I believe he was 18.
Mm-hmm.
I think he might have been 16.
I've heard this story.
Might have been 16. Him and his buddy were playing with a gun. Thought it was not loaded, and there was a bullet in it, and his buddy put up to his head and said, "Hey, Earl," and pulled the trigger and shot him point blank in the head with 22, and the bullet is still there. They said it would do more damage trying to take it out than just to leave it in, and so it's still in the back. In fact, he had to go in. He cut his leg and had to go get X-rays and MRI and all this, and they freaked out when they saw it. Because they look at the X-ray and they look at him, and then they look at the X-ray and they look at him, and they're like, something's not matching up. And then they obviously found out pretty quick that was the story. But he still got a 22 bullet in his head from when he was 16, 18.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine.
I can understand digging it out of your head,
the brain.
You can't mess with the brain, but I think the government does that to probably just save money.
You didn't do it like in the movies, just like bite down on a rag and
no, I didn't do that.
Get your
We weren't that tough.
get your K-bar.
We weren't
and
that
just
tough.
dig it out.
Nope.
Spit it in a metal tray and
Yeah. No, those are
wrap it up.
Those are the tough dudes before us doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's me getting into it. And then, I mean, I had a pretty good 18 years with Dent Wizard.
Yeah.
And in later on, you mentioned the culture thing. Started trying to get them to invest some money into building their culture just through doing some good video content. So that went a little ways, but whenever I was trying to push that upwards is when they were really starting to feel some financial pressure. So I was able to do a little bit with that, but it never went as far as I was hoping. I was trying to push that thing uphill as much as I could. But eventually it met resistance.
Yeah.
I don't think people at the top really understand the value of that. But you did. You always valued brand, building the brand, making good, cool content, telling the story of the people who represent the brand on the ground. So that kind of rolls us right into what we want to talk about is, how did Dent Slayer get started?
Yeah. So that, well, the tool journey precedes Dent Slayer because I started making tools with Pro PDR, and that was back when Bill Hewlett owned the company. I actually met him because we were working in Minneapolis, and I bought a fathead light from him.
This was when you were chasing hail with Dent Wizard?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We were working up there, and I bought a fathead, and he hand-delivered it to me, and we met, and I forget, but I started talking to him, and kind of became buddies through Facebook or something. I don't remember exactly, but I know, fast forward to going to Australia, I got the opportunity to go to Australia, and I got my visa cleared, and you're trying to organize all your tools and see what you're going to take, and everything's got to pack in a Pelican case or somehow get on a plane. And I remember kind of looking around, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do for a tool cart? And I didn't have a tool cart that made sense. And everyone was like, oh, just get a trash can, flip the lid over, put wheels on it, drill holes in the lid, run your tools and all that. And I was like, I don't want to work for 4 months out of a trash can. Like mentally, I know there's guys that do it and they do it well, and God bless you if you can do it. But there is a quality of life that I like to maintain, and working out of a trash can just wasn't the look I was going for, and so it was like, yeah, we're not really feeling the trash can thing. So,
if it had been any other container besides a trash can, maybe you could have done it. But you couldn't swallow the idea of working off of a trash can.
But it makes a lot of sense. Like if you do do it, like it makes sense. It just
functionally it works.
Cheap and it works.
Right.
But there's a mental thing, and there's a picture of what you're communicating that I just couldn't.
You couldn't do it.
I just couldn't get past. Form and function are two things that are very important to me.
Yeah.
And the form was just like, nah, man, I'm not doing this. And so that's started me trying to put together a tool cart, and I made a few different versions of them, and I was like, okay, well, I can't just have a tool cart. There were lots of tool carts that you could buy to work locally in the States at the time, but I wanted one that I could take to Australia and bring it back. And so I started making this tool cart that folded up into a briefcase. Iron Man was coming out around then, and there was all that cool stuff he was doing, and I was like, I can make a tool cart that does this. And so I feel like most people started with a tool cart that was an established tool cart and said, okay, how can we make it turn into this? And I started reverse. I was
this meaning something you can travel with?
Yes.
Something packable.
Exactly. And so I started reverse, and I said, okay, this is the dimensions that I want it to be. This is the size and dimensions I want it to be, or the size. And now I need to be able to turn this into a tool cart. And so I started backwards. And so I took all my dimensions, and I literally had a briefcase. And, there's when you're prototyping or you're getting a proof of concept, I mean, anything works just to get proof of concept. And I was cutting up a briefcase and like, okay, I got a top tray and a battery tray. And I just need a mast and wheels. And okay, this works. Why not? Mm-hmm. And so I developed the tool holders that flip on the side. So the TC5 was a tool cart that I had through Pro PDR that Bill brought on to his inventory, and it was awesome. And the whole thing was less than 19 pounds, and it was the size of a briefcase about. The whole cart folded up into itself, and I could put 2 in a backpack, and you could take it on a carry-on.
It came with a backpack, right?
Well, I started making a bag for it.
Uh-huh.
We were trying to get that, but it was hard to find the right bag manufacturer, so we never made it available. But I had a couple custom bags I had made for prototyping that I used.
Yeah.
But I could put 2 in a bag and take it on a plane. I could have put it on a carry-on, although I never did. I just checked it just because. But that was the goal, was let's get a tool cart to Australia. And so anyhow, I did that. It was a TC5, and it was a really cool thing. I just have 2 in my shop right now that are leftovers. And so that started my relationship with Bill. And then I talked to him about building the first.
Did they sell a lot of those TC5s?
Yes. I don't know quantities that he ever sold. I just got a check for the royalties a couple times a year for whatever that was. And
that was your first experience.
my first experience. And, I wasn't making a whole lot of money, and it's not about the money of it. It's about the meeting the need and to feel like you're contributing to society or to guys who have a problem. And so that was definitely fulfilling that part of it. And so then I started talking to Bill about other products, and he was going to build my Dent Slayer at one point, the tool.
Door tool?
The door tool. We never got that far down the road with it, but we did make the tool stool.
Really?
My first version was with Bill. There's a few that are still out there, and it was.
What's the tool stool?
It was a hood stand leverage device. So it sat on the hood stand, looks like this microphone stand almost, and you put your tool in the middle, and it's a leverage device, and you can position it around the table, and
you don't have to hook into the hood.
You don't have to hook into the hood. You can raise and lower it depending on your hood height, and it was a good thing.
Yep.
And
new version still available through
PDRtool.com, A1 Tools. Yes. I believe they're sold out at the moment, but yes, it is a product that we offer. There's one right there.
On the wall.
On the wall.
Okay.
But so that started my journey into building tools. And then at some point, Bill sold the company. Just backing up a second, man. Bill was doing it right. I remember some of the first MTEs I went to. Bill's booth, he was really big into lights. That was Bill's thing. I remember he would give talks about the different lights and the fades. And that's when LEDs were first coming in. There was transition from the bulbs, the fluorescent bulbs that we would use, to LEDs. And
was he the first guy to put LEDs in a halo light?
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that. But I know.
If anybody knows who that was,
yeah,
maybe comment.
Yeah. So I want to get Stucky on here at one point. We'll talk to Carl, and Carl can help fill in the gaps of that, because Carl is another big-time light manufacturer currently still here, and he's got good story too. He's Dent Wizard and got into tool making, and so we'll try to get him on here at some point. But I don't know where timelines for him and Bill and who was first. But I remember going to Mobile Tech Expo and seeing Bill's booth, and he just had these huge lights everywhere, and he had light stands, and he had carts, and he had some hood stands, and I mean, he was shaking things up, and he was doing it right, and he was very passionate about what he did. I remember going to some of his talks about lights, and I mean, he had this very warm, soothing voice that when he would, no matter what he talked about, it was, you know, it was very soothing and calming, and he would talk about lights, and it was very cool to listen to, especially anybody who's talking about something they're passionate about. And he was definitely passionate about the lights. So we did that with him for a little bit, and then he sold it. And then once he sold it to the new current owners, they decided I guess, I haven't talked to them, but they just went through and just started scrapping some of the offerings, what they offered as a company, and I guess they were maybe trying to trim down their product range, and they trimmed my tool cart and they trimmed my tool stool. At that time, it was called the Sissy Post, which is a pretty dumb name.
Sissy Post.
But so they trimmed out those, and so then I was just like, oh, well, that was cool for a while it lasted. No more tool making for me. And so I kind of thought the ride was over.
Did they call you and tell you?
No.
It just kind of happened.
Just happened.
You never really developed a relationship with the new owners.
Nope.
Yeah.
He never reached out. Yeah. It was just ghost. And anyhow, it is what that is. But so then I kept on those tool carts. Like, meaning whatever was out there, I tried to buy them up and hold on to them because I knew that they were kind of a rare thing at that point. And so I'm in Australia, and where we would work is these huge warehouses they'd rent out. I mean, it takes a golf cart to drive across this thing, and the managers drove golf carts through the warehouses. There'd be 40 to 50 techs in there, and then there'd be, you know, half a dozen or a dozen R&I guys in there on top of all the other the admin girls, and there's a lot of moving pieces. And so when you showed up, remember when you go to Longhorn or any restaurant, when you put your name in, they give you a little, like a beeper.
Sure.
So when we would show up in the morning, you'd have to collect your beeper.
No way.
And you had to have it on you, either on your belt or on your cart, because if they needed you for a redo, a missed dent, or a question, whatever it is, they didn't want to call you, and they didn't want to come walking, and so they would just beep you.
Wow.
And if they beeped you, you had to be there pretty quick.
Like an old school pager? Like a Motorola?
Kinda, but not that.
Or was it like a restaurant thing?
Like a restaurant thing. Literally a restaurant buzzer.
Like a cup.
It just
like this?
started glowing red, and
Okay.
and you had to come running. Your table's ready.
Except you're used to that buzz giving you something good. So like a Pavlov's dog, your mouth would start watering when that thing would go off, but really you were in trouble.
It was
so did that ruin the pager restaurant thing for you forever?
I haven't thought about it much deeper than that, but
okay.
But yeah, usually if it beeped, it was, you know, you didn't polish something right, or you missed a dent, or you were more than likely you were in trouble.
Yep.
You know. So you got to respond quick. I mean, they didn't want to buzz you twice.
Right.
So you better go running.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, they'd put your name. Everyone got a little name on the beeper or the buzzer, and so in the morning you would get your buzzer and then go to your work. Well, there was quite a few Matts there, and I think there was a couple Matt B's even, and so there was this little competitive thing where some of the Australian managers just really loved dogging the American technicians, and there's this like, we're better than you, and you guys suck, and we're the best, and nothing America does is good, and Australia's better at everything, and so there was this, and it was fun.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it was just good banter and back and forth, and so at one point I got my pager and I ripped off the Matt B and I put on Dent Slayer, and that was just to be spiteful to them, as like, I'm better than you type thing. I'm the Dent Slayer.
Yeah.
And so I pulled my name off, put on Dent Slayer. And then they saw it and they were like, "Oh, Mr. Dent Slayer." And then it was just this big, like, again, it was just out of fun. Like,
Right.
and so I kind of stuck a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And then Dent Slayer, we need, and it was
They were
all,
really making fun of you.
yes, they were making
Right.
fun of me about
Yeah.
calling me Dent Slayer because I, made up my own nickname. You're not supposed to do that.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. So, there was a, dang it, I missed my.
They called you the Dent Slayer.
They called me the Dent Slayer.
Yeah. They gave you the nickname, but they're making fun of you.
They're making fun of me.
Uh-huh.
And I just started my Instagram at that point. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
I just started my Instagram.
Yeah.
And so I changed my Instagram to Dent Slayer.
Nice.
To Dent Slayer.
Okay. I've
And so
never
I was
heard
like-
this story.
I was like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
run with this. This is
Okay.
going somewhere now. And
I'll claim that.
So, I get back here and I'm wanting to, like, man, I really wanted to build this tool with Pro PDR because I really love this tool and I've had it for so long and I want another one. And so I think A1 made a post about, they were slow, which is, that was a long, because they're not slow anymore. They're, running on all 8 cylinders, wide open, full throttle right now. But they were slow back then. And they made a post saying, like, hey, if you are interested in getting any tools made or anything refurbished,
Custom
tools, let us know. We'll do it. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to send them this one. I just have them a duplicate made because I just want another one in case this one.
This is your original door tool.
Yeah, in case I lose it, I want a second one.
Yep.
And I said, well, maybe I'll have them cut the handle off and put a new handle on it and just polish it up and so it was beat up. And so I said, hey, I'm going to send you this tool. Leave this one alone. Just trace the shape of it, and then make me a new one with a new handle. And so, like, okay, we can do that. And so I forget when, a week or 2 weeks later, I get a call from John, and he's like, hey, Matt, this is John with A1, and I really like this tool. Like, it's pretty interesting, and I don't know that we have anything like it now that we offer, and I think it's got a place in the market. Are you interested in us making this tool? I was like, yeah, that's why I sent it to you. Make me one. He's like, no, like to sell. And I was like, you mean like more than one? like my skull's a little thick.
Yeah.
More than one? He's like, yeah, I want to offer this as a product. I think it would be a good tool to offer. And I'm like, yeah, of course. And so that's kind of how that started, and we made that tool, and then later that turned into longer versions, and it just kind of spiraled from there. But that was the beginning of my relationship with A1, was just trying to duplicate a tool that I didn't want to let go of or ever misplace. And I'm very thankful to them because they reached out to me, and all these things, man, that like even getting into PDR, like they weren't things I sought after. Like I never pursued per se being a dent guy. That just kind of fell in my lap, with my roommate. Even the dent stuff. It's not like I set out to be a tool builder. It just kind of fell in my lap.
Happened.
And I'm very thankful because there's a lot of those things that I'm just very thankful that came my way, and that's where we're at today, right? And so I'm very thankful for them for reaching out to me and pursuing that, and they've given me a really, basically, a good platform or opportunity to run with the Dent Slayer tool line, and they've been very gracious and just very good people to work with. As you know, you've spent quite a bit of time with them, and so we're making the tools, and we have our Dent Slayer line, and MTE was never really in my thoughts about getting a booth there or doing anything like that. It was just so far in I wasn't thinking about it, and then I started making the mod rail cart for the pack out, right? And that was the 2MB1 tool holders, and I made one or two for me, and then guys were like, hey man, make me that. And I'm like, I'll show you how to make it. Like, I don't want to make these. I'll just show you how I did it. It's very easy. Anybody can do it. And then you quickly realize that a lot of people don't want to do that. Maybe they can, maybe they don't want to do that. They don't want to.
They'd rather fix dents.
They don't want to rummage through Home Depot for
Yeah.
this and that, and drill holes. And I mean, some people want to cut their grass when they come home. Some people don't. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll build it for you, but I'm not.
That doesn't sound fun to me to make that. There's a lot of guys where you think that's fun and you enjoy that, but I'd rather get that sent to me in the mail personally.
And I realized that was the same with a lot of other guys. They didn't want to
Yes.
do it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll make some. And so I started making a couple for guys and just offering it. And I was barely making any money off of this.
That wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't.
No.
It wasn't. But bringing this around was
MTE.
MTE. John offered for me to bring that cart in the booth, put it in their in the expo booth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool. And so that MTE, I brought it, and that booth was packed. And I mean, they have a really nice big built booth and their carts and how it's all made. And so
Right on the corner of the PDR Dent Olympics floor.
And there was no room for me in the booth. And so I just rolled my pack out and I set it right out there, outside of their booth, right there at the corner of the Dent Olympics Anson thing. And then we just got traffic and just tons of traffic. And
this was before everyone had a pack out.
This was before.
Yes.
Some people hadn't even seen the pack out.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I believe I had the first PDR built specific pack out tool top. I mean, now there's quite a few and some really good ones that are way better than mine. We don't offer that anymore. Well, we do offer another version, but not the same one I did then. It's
Right.
changed. But that one we don't offer anymore. But
No mod rails.
no mod rails. Yeah. Yeah, so he gave me an opportunity to bring my thing into the booth, right outside the booth, and sell it. And we got tons of traffic, and I think the tool that was bumping. I mean, it was just tons of people and got lots of activity. And so he gave me this opportunity, and I took it, and it was awesome. And the relationship has just snowballed and progressed from there. And I don't remember the last time we counted how many different products are available through pdrtool.com for Dent Slayer.
A lot.
There's a lot, and some are crossover because you might have one individual and the one's in a set, and
Right.
but we've got 30, 40 different products that are available through them now that are all Dent Slayer products. Some are back here on the wall, and some are not. But it's just slowly turned into what it's been. And then we brought you in, like we talked about last week, to bring the marketing and just really push it. And now we're here for the podcast, and it's been cool how everything has just unfolded. And you don't really plan for any of it, but that's the fun part of it. It's that adventure part of it, and it's cool to see where it's going, and interested to see who we have in here. Like I said, Stucky, he'd be a really good one to have in here. I know he's got a good story to tell, and he's not too far away either. He's only South Carolina, so
If you know him, start pressuring him.
he can do it in a day. He could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Start that slow pressure right now so he'll eventually come on here.
Yeah. Last year we went to Italy for
Yep.
our PDR Expo. So MTE is the world's largest vehicle reconditioning expo, and people come from all over the world. Find a country on a map and point, and there's probably technicians who come from it, and it's huge. I mean, I think last year there was 6,000 people there.
Crazy.
And so now there's some other ones that are starting to pop up around the country, and there's one in Japan and in Germany, and this Italy one I got invited to, which is the DB Expo, and I went there last year, and we set up just a little booth with a few of our samplings of tools, and it's been a hit. It's been good. We're starting to get distributors in other countries that will buy our tools in bulk, and they take them over there and they resell them to people locally there, and it's been cool to watch where Dent Slayer brand started and what it's turned into now. And we're making plans to go back to Italy this year. That's kind of on the radar to do. I won't say it's in stone yet. It's in pencil. So we probably going to do it, but that's kind of where we're going.
So with tools, if you don't know Matt, like he's always thinking about something. He's always building something in his brain. He's always sending me pictures of like, hey, look, this is what I'm working on. Like it just doesn't stop. So like for A1 to bring you in, you're just a machine that just keeps pumping stuff out because that's just what you do, right? Like, I mean, before your energy was pumping into making dent tools, you were making something else. Like that's just how your brain works. That's just what you're doing all the time. So like, this isn't just some guy trying to make tools to sell them. Like he just is constantly doing this. But thankfully him and A1 hooked up. So now everybody can kind of benefit from the stuff that he's just constantly thinking up.
Yeah, and I think that's what, keeps me healthy, keeps my mind healthy. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't ever come to market. You try it out, and it might be cool for my own, to have here in my shop, but it's not a marketable item or something that we want to mass produce. It's just never gonna be a thing. But just going back to that Dave Sanders story where the door. He had a problem, which was the door just exploded open, and he had to finish that dent. And he looks around and he grabs and he just continues.
Just made it happen.
He just made it happen.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I want to stay with my tool building journey. Is, I'm not necessarily trying to think of, tools that are already out there to just reproduce. We do a little bit of that if it makes sense. But I'm obviously thinking of, here's a problem. Is there a tool that solves it? If not, how do I solve that problem? And that tool stool right there started at the BMW plant in South Carolina.
We've already mentioned this thing twice. Why don't we pull that thing down?
I'll grab it.
Let's grab that thing. We're trying to do, if you're not watching, Matt's reaching behind him and pull this tool off the wall. We got this tool wall behind him with a bunch of Dent Slayer stuff. But we're trying to do every episode, try to pull something off the wall and talk about it. So this is the tool stool.
Yeah, so this is not how it started. Meaning it's not what it looked like originally, obviously. Yep. But let me just back up a minute. So we're at the BMW plant in South Carolina where they make all the BMW SUVs. They got hail damage. The whole entire property got hit with hail. I think there was about 6,000 SUVs that were there. There was 150 technicians working. We had tents set up, and they were just pushing technicians in every corner of that place where they could work on a car. And so it was just a really big job. And these are brand new cars. And they wanted these cars to look perfect, right? They're brand new.
They're not even to the dealership yet.
No, they're at the manufacturing plant, and they're brand new, and so they want to look perfect. And so there's some high standards there, but the Germans were coming over and inspecting these cars, and they started looking at the bottom sides of these hoods. And if the top looked great and the bottom was messed up, then they'd kick the hood. No, we're replacing this now. And they didn't want to do that, right? So it was, guys, no more scratching the bottom of the hoods. And also, the way some of those were built, they had these really big holes that are manufactured that way. And if you went on there with a tool to pry, it would distort the whole bottom.
Yeah.
Like it was just this flimsy thing. And So if it was distorted or messed up or scratched a lot, then it was not accepted. And so I'm like, man, I don't want to mess up these hoods. Like, how do I fix them? If you use an S hook and they're aluminum, you can end up ripping the holes. You can mangle the bottom. And so this problem, how do I solve this problem? And South Carolina, so it's not too far from me. And so I ran home one weekend. I forget what. I think we maybe had something going on.
Why didn't you drive?
I come home one weekend, and I'm like, okay, how do I make something? And I had prior used a jack stand, like a 3-ton jack stand off, and
Like a bottle jack?
That works.
Yeah.
But it's very heavy. It's way overkill for what we need. I don't need to hold 3 tons of a car. And those things are cast iron. They're very bulky, and it's not something you want to travel with. And so I'm like, all right, I need to make essentially a jack stand, but lightweight, and it collapses down, and it can fit into a Pelican case in case I want to take it to Australia. And so I go home, and I'm welding and cutting, and, it's just like you would imagine, like parts flying and things getting all this stuff. And so I make one, and I'm like, yes. And I had bungees in it. You could pick it up and lay it down. When you kind of like tent pegs, when you pull tent legs apart and they're bungeed together. Mm-hmm. So I had this thing all, and it was really cool. And so I take it back to the plant, and I'm using it. And guys are like, what the heck is that? And
I didn't get mine. Who's passing those out?
Who makes this? Where is this from? And I'm like, oh, I just made it at home. And they're like, oh my gosh, I want. And so then they see the benefit of it. And they're like, well, can I borrow it? And so them down the hood, somebody come borrow it, and they'd work on it or use it. And so this thing's getting passed around, and it's like, hey man, as soon as you make these, I'm your first customer. Like, I want one of these. And I'm like,
you basically get a leverage point anywhere you want it, location and height wise.
And it doesn't affect the bottom of the hood with having to put a ring or distort the bottom. So and you can put it close to the end of your tool, which maximizes the leverage instead of using a hole that's there from the manufacturer that might be 12, 16 inches away from where you need to push. So you can adjust this. And so there's lots of things about it that are cool, but that's how it started, was just out of need. And so that was the one I was producing with Pro PDR. And then that fell out. And so then we made this
What's all this going on in the bottom?
So
there's a bunch of holes on the bottom platform that this thing stands on.
So, So we wanted, me being a traveling hill guy at the time, that I don't want to lug around 10 different things that do 10 different tools that do 10 different things. It was like, can I do one tool that does multiple things, like a Swiss Army knife? So one feature of it, and it's a little tight there, but this comes off, and it's a different thread than what you see here. And this you can thread in a normal tip, so like a normal PDR tip, whether it be pointed, and here's a soft one. They thread right in the top, and you can adjust this height-wise. I don't want to do it too much because it's loud through the mic, but you can adjust this height to whatever you want, and you could put this up against a brace on the bottom of a hood and hold a brace up. So maybe when you're working the hood with a whale tail and the brace is flopping out of the way and you need the brace for the structure, you can put this up tight and it'll hold the brace up and give you usability out of your whale tail. Or you can put a little dolly tip in here and do some off dolly work, or you could even take this off and put in a sharp tip, and we would repair belt moldings and stuff for that, or different roof
gas cap lids,
gas doors, fuel doors, or roof moldings. Like some moldings are disposable, some are not. Like BMW roof moldings, they're painted and they're expensive, and if you can fix them, then you could fix them with this. So you'd just pull the molding down to the part instead of vice versa. And so then we have this part where you would stick a tool and use it like a saddle, and you just pry.
Shaped like a V.
You'd pry to get ideal leverage behind the tool.
This thing it looks like a bottle jack, or It looks like a fireworks. You buy at the fireworks and you light it and it shoots the fireworks.
mortars.
Off. Yeah.
So then we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do with the base? And we made the base to where you can lay this thing down. You can pry off of here. And whatever angle you want, you can use the holes. Maybe it's a top of a fender where sometimes we get into areas where there's too much access and we need leverage. Or we need leverage points.
Chevy fender today, Chevy truck.
So you can lay this down.
Completely open.
And you can leverage off of this. And then
I've seen a lot of guys use them in quarter panels.
Let's keep going. And so you pull the pin here.
It better not explode.
And you can take this off, set it aside.
Uh-huh.
And then we have this plate. And these 4 holes are threaded. These 4 holes are not. And so the idea behind it is you can bolt this to a structure of a vehicle, again, that maybe has too much access. So you bolt this to the car, and then you can put your tool through here and just work it through these holes or through the top. And so I just tried to create a tool that had lots of function.
Sure.
That a traveling hail guy could throw this in his. I mean, you can throw this in your pack out cart and have lots.
You could throw that in the pocket of your Jinkos.
It would definitely fit. But we wanted to have something that was usable to guys that are traveling who need multiple options for creating leverage. And another one that not many people know about, which is fantastic, and it's for most hail guys, is for you can flip it over this way. And so your roof hangers, like there's lots of ones out there, but they're just a solid bar, and they have S hooks in each end. You can hook it to the brace. Well, you can put this in. You can put your leverage bar inside under the brace. With your S hooks in the holes. So say it's laying down or hanging down 8-10 inches.
Right.
You can put this upside down on that, and then this pushes up on the brace.
Okay.
So this is holding the brace up, and you just make it all tight. So that now when you're sometimes when you have a whale tail and you're trying, you have a dent that's over a brace, and you're trying to use a whale tail to get leverage, but the brace is folding out of the way.
You can't get a rod on it.
You can't get a rod on it, but you can't get leverage from the brace. Well, you flip this over, you make it all tight, and it pushes that brace and gives the brace support, and then you can continue using your whale tail. And so there's lots of functionality out of it that we have, and those are the kind of problems that I'm trying to bring to some of my tool designs is modularity.
Modularity.
That
I don't know if that's a word.
That just makes sense to guys who are, and this isn't just for traveling hail guys, it's for, route guys or wholesale guys or retail shop guys. And I screw it to wood, and you can play with it. I mean, we've made it this little plate where I screw it down to big pieces of plywood, and you can put it in bedsides and do all kind of stuff. And
wow.
So this is the tool stool, but pretty cool little thing, and it's just one of the many items we have on pdrtool.com. If you check it out, there's quite a few there. Again, I believe that is sold out at the moment. They just had such a busy hail year at A1. Just getting caught up has been, a chore for them to get caught up with the current volume of sales that they've been putting out. So hopefully we can have some more of these, possibly by MTE if enough guys are interested in it. But I don't think a lot of guys know. I mean, they might see it in the catalog and be like, I don't know what that is. Why do I need it?
Now you know.
Yeah, we'll do another video on it. We never did a video.
We need to do a video on it.
On that, just showing the usability and the function. And once you know, and then it's not, okay, I need that. It's just to make your job easier. That's all we're trying to do.
Right. Tool stool.
So
that do it for us?
Yeah, I think we're right at the 2-hour mark, right? We're
pretty much.
Pretty close to the 2-hour mark. So, we knocked out my story. We talked about you and your story. We talked about Dent Slayer and the origin and where it came from. And next episode, we'll start with the guests.
First guest.
First guest.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Who's it gonna be?
Who's it gonna be?
Don't tell us, Matt.
I won't.
Am I gonna
I
be
still don't know
surprised when we
yet.
come in?
No, meaning we have some, but
We don't have it scheduled.
the scheduling,
Yeah.
we're trying to move some things around, and so one might get here before the other, and we'll see. But yeah, so we're gonna have our first guest next episode, and that's when it becomes fun.
That is, yes.
I know
This was kind of painful.
Well, I know
doing-
your
talking
story.
about me,
I know
yeah.
your story a lot, and you know
Right.
mine, and I think a lot of people who know us know
Right.
a lot of our story, and maybe
Yeah.
some of it's redundant, and maybe it's not if you're a new listener. So thank you for sitting through that. But yeah, we're excited to get to some of the good stuff, which
Yes.
is what we're wanting to do, which is some of the
Yes.
interesting people that we know.
Yes. I'm excited.
So
I'm excited to hear some stories that I haven't heard before.
yes, yeah, yep, it's going to be good. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Again, we are on Apple Podcast. We are on Spotify. We are on YouTube and
Video on YouTube and Facebook.
Facebook. Yeah,
Full episodes with video.
Facebook has been huge for the video side. The last
Facebook
one.
is it for our industry, man. It's the biggest.
It is. Yeah. So
Matt,
appreciate it.
good job.
Yep.
See y'all next time.
Next time. Later.
The Dent Slayer, Matt Boyette. Thank you so much for being here.
She's smooth.